This is a discussion on the technology we used during the planning and research stage, and it's just how it helped us and what it allowed us to do really with our actual thriller.
One of the techniques we used was Google. This was to view conventional thrillers and view previous thrillers from earlier years, such as Chris Palmer's group thriller, which was called Before Dawn. We examined the different kind of techniques they use, and this helped us give a basis to plan what a thriller is and what it should achieve.
Yeah, we used Blogger, didn't we, as well? Because through Google we used that, and that didn't just allow us to look at Chris Palmer's, but all of the previous years, which was really useful because it's obviously quite specific to what we were doing as well, so it helped us.
We also used YouTube to look up music that we could use within our thriller. We found loads of different types, and since most of them are copyright free, we can add them into our thriller. Also, we used it to look up the beginning of Cape Fear and The Woman in Black. We used the codes and conventions within that, and we adapted it within our own thriller. We also finally looked at The Good, Bad and the Ugly, as the final scene in that could be related to our scene, where they are having a duel and the camera snaps between each character quickly.
Our final technology we used when planning was IMDb. We used this for multiple things, but mainly for the reviews. So we saw our specific audience of male teenagers and that, what type of films they liked. We also looked at the age restrictions, so we sort of had a basis to look at what our film should be. And also within it, underneath all the film titles and that, it usually has a description. And this allowed us to see the general narratives of thrillers and what sort of codes and conventions that they need to sort of clarify as a thriller. This is our second discussion on the blogging of our thriller. This is about how we presented our planning and research and our actual process of how we uploaded everything.
One of the methods we used was Prezi, which was an online publication tool which allowed us to make online PowerPoint.
I also thought Prezi was quite good because it had sort of different styles to it. So even if you use Prezi multiple times, you could make them look like different posts, which I thought would be more interesting.
Calamaio is some software that you can use if you wanted to upload Word documents or PowerPoints. This came in quite handy as a few of us used it quite often with our Word documents we wanted to upload.
Yeah, and especially when you had to do a lot of writing, because Word was the most sort of useful for that because it was quite simple. So you couldn't obviously direct Word straight onto the blog. So through Calamaio, which made it a lot easier.
We used it most when we had feedback and we didn't want to make a full PowerPoint on it, so we just uploaded it on Word.
Another method we used was SlideShare. Yes, it was similar to Prezi, but we used PowerPoint and then we uploaded our PowerPoint onto SlideShare and then we embedded it into our blog.
Powtoon was a really good one because you could get quite a lot of animations for it, and even though I found Powtoon quite difficult to use, I thought it was sort of like I was saying earlier, it was quite interesting and it was quite fun to use as well, to be honest.
Yeah, it was more of a animation than it was a PowerPoint, as you could add characters and props in the scene, what they called it, and it just made it a different fancy way to upload a PowerPoint.
YouTube is probably what we use the most because whenever we did vlogs or interviews or our focus groups and stuff like that, we sort of had to do it through YouTube, and it was quite easy to do as well, I think, so that sort of helped us out.
Yeah, it was easy to embed and it didn't take long to do either.
We also used Amaze, which was also similar to SlideShare and Prezi, which allowed us to make an online publication, a PowerPoint, and the amount of templates and animations just gave overall a good after effect.
Yeah, I thought it was quite similar to Powtoon, wasn't it? Once again, it was a bit hard to use though, compared to things just generally PowerPoint, and when we redirected it through SlideShare, I found it was quite complicated. We had to sort of look into it a good hour and a half before you could actually proper start using it. So yeah. I used GoAnimate, and that was for a storyboard that we did, and that was just to show the general narrative, and when we had a change in story when we did our caravan, I'd use that again and it was easy to update.
We used Google Drive quite a bit, which was to upload all of our documents and PowerPoints, and it was easy because it allowed us to embed all of our documents onto our blog.
Yeah, it was probably the best way to upload anything that we couldn't give each other in hand. Like, for example, if someone needed something over a weekend, instead of going around the house and giving them a physical USB, you could just upload it to the Google Drive and anyone could access it within our group.
Yeah, and the fact that you could upload any kind of documents, it made it easier for us to access.
Yeah.
Vlogs was sort of, we only used those for one thing really, and that was for when we went out filming, and we sort of just sort of showed the process of what we did on our days out and sort of how we were doing when filming. I think we used them for every day when we went out really, but
Yeah,
it was sort of just an effective way of showing sort of our audience like, the behind the scenes almost to the production.
Quizlet was used to ask our target audience questions regarding our thriller and what kind of thriller that they'd like to see. We then used the feedback and implemented it into our thriller.
Yeah, I think it was good as well because it was quite simple and it gave you like lots of options of what you could do for it, and that was used by James, and I think he said it was really good because when you went on it and you sort of just wanted to put one question on it, it would help you to like redirect you to carry on the quiz and like go into more depth for each question.
And it was just easy to understand and easy to use.
Yeah, it gave us good feedback as well with our focus groups.
PowerPoint, like we said earlier, it was really good, but the only problem is obviously you couldn't upload it straight to the blog itself, so we had to sort of do it through SlideShare.
It was probably the simplest out of like all of our PowerPoint software. It was just the most basic. You couldn't really do much with it, so it's just one of those things that if we desperately needed a post, we'd use this.
Yeah, I found it like really good for character profiles and things, so yeah. The last one was WebNode, and we sort of created our own website. It was only a simple website, but we thought it would sort of make us more connected and that, and it would give our viewer more like options to look at our thriller. So yeah, I found that quite useful, to be honest, because even though you couldn't create many pages, it was still quite simple and easy to use.
And finally, we use social media with accounts on Twitter and Instagram.
So with Twitter, what we used it for was to post polls and ask our target audience what they liked. So for example, one of our questions was what kind of thrillers they liked, either action thrillers or crime thrillers. And we also used it to keep our audience up to date with our current processes.
We also used an Instagram account. This wasn't so much for polls, but more for just pictures of like behind the scenes and like not even when we're out filming, like just doing general work and that. And I think we sort of did that just to show that the film was still like progressing and there wasn't any like halt in production. So overall, I'd say my favourite was probably Prezi, and this is just because it was so simple and the different styles you could use, and I think I just personally used it a lot because it was like just generally the most easiest to use. Like compared to websites like Powtoon and Amaze, you didn't really need to spend much time getting used to it. You sort of knew how to do it straight away, which I thought was like best for saving time and that.
My personal favourite would probably be Google Drive, just because it was so open and allowed us to upload any formats of documents, such as PowerPoints or documents or PDF documents, which we use quite a lot. And it was just generally easy to use just because of previous experience, and even for new users it was just easy to understand.
And finally, I found YouTube the easiest for me. Since I was the main editor of our actual thriller, putting together a video and uploading it to YouTube was the easiest and quickest way for me to make a post.
This is our third discussion on how we constructed our thriller. This sort of includes the filming and how we actually got the footage for our final cut.
So we use the Samsung Galaxy S7 Edge to record vlogs and keep our audience updated on social media, such as on Twitter and Instagram. We posted behind the scenes, and then we uploaded our vlog for YouTube after editing.
I thought phones were quite good because the camera was sort of very technical and I'm not very experienced in that, so like when Hussein and that were using the camera to film the actual footage, I thought it was easy for me to use the phone to get footage of, like Hussein said, like vlogs and stuff, so it was a more simple way of filming.
For the our main thriller, we used the camera that we're currently recording on now. It was the best we could have because the phones were obviously being used for the vlog, so using this digital camera we filmed the thriller.
Yeah, what did you actually learn from it though? I thought like what I learnt most is sort of how to stabilise it. Like when we did our first cut, a lot of the footage we got was quite sort of shaky and didn't really feel fluent, did it? But then after a few goes of it, I thought that when, for example, like when we were filming the shot of going down the barrel of the actual hitman, I thought that was quite hard to get stabilised. But after practice and that, I thought that I sort of taught myself how to get it to look fluent.
Also, the different types of shooting methods on the phone, on the camera, such as Superior Auto, which reduced blurred noise from the actual shot, which made it easier for Brad to edit. We used power banks to ensure our camera was charged. Because we were outside and we didn't have access to any plugs, we used these external power banks and used them to charge up our camera just in case it died during filming.
Yeah, we sort of learnt the hard way because on our first time shooting, when we went to the industrial state, the camera was charged, but it sort of ran out of charge. And then ever since then, when we were like filming at the cricket club in the forest and that, Hussein always like made sure to bring them so we didn't have that problem of continuity error.
The tripod was used with the camera, as Joe said earlier, to help stabilise the video. We would set it down in the position like an angle. For example, the running scene in the forest was used with the tripod, as a tracking shot behind the actor wouldn't suit the scene very well. So we decided to set it up on the hill and video it on top of a tripod.
Yeah, I hadn't really like used a tripod before, so after like Hussein and Brad showed me in that, obviously because like the scenes where I didn't need to be in, I usually filmed, like I felt that was probably the equipment that I learnt the most from, like just how to make it look the most fluent. And obviously it stabilises it by like itself, but what heights to have it at and what angles are the best for it to use at and all that.
It was also useful as the top of it was on a swivel, so we could get like a panning shot of the agents running, which would help edit in the later scene.
So this is the final discussion. This is on the post-production technologies we used and what we learnt from them. Brad was our main editor for our thriller, so he'll probably have the most in-depth analysis. However, I think like myself and Hussein still learnt a lot from it.
So Windows Movie Maker, this was our most basic form of editing. We use this because, for example, when we were editing our vlogs, we didn't really need to change any of the lighting and stuff like that. And we only use this to edit our vlogs in terms of splitting our clips and just putting them together.
I found this one quite useful as well, because even though I did little editing, like Hussein said, this was the most simple. So I sort of could learn the most from this, for just general things like cutting and replacing clips and that, so yeah.
Sony Vegas Pro 13, this is what I use to edit the main thriller. This is a lot more complicated than Windows Movie Maker, as it has a lot more features and it allows you to do more complicated tasks. As Hussein said earlier, some of our shots in the thriller weren't perfect, so we had to change the lighting and adapt it to the rest of our scenes. So in the caravan I had to make that scene darker so it would look more intense and it would match the forest scene.
We also used Sony Vegas Pro 14 just because it had a couple more features than Sony Vegas Pro 13. So we mainly use this just to make our aspect ratio different, just to make it look like a movie.
One of the pieces of technology we used was just a iPad. I use this more than anyone, I'd say, because I used software such as Splice on this, and this is a really simple editing software which I mainly use it just for vlogs, and it just cuts clips and replaces them and that, and even though the editing wasn't like as polished as obviously our main thriller, it was still good enough for just a general vlog.
And to do most of the editing, we obviously had a computer and a laptop. I used it on my computer as it was the easiest to complete on, and on Hussein's laptop he used Windows Movie Maker.
Overall, what did you learn most from editing the thriller?
I learned from Sony Vegas Pro 13 about masking, which is an editing technique that I found on YouTube. It just allows us to make our shots look cleaner and sharper when we look back at them through the software that we used.
I learned the most from Sony Vegas Pro 14 because Brad taught me some of the features when I was editing. So for example, he helped me edit the lighting and told me how to edit the aspect ratios. And for example, one of our clips, we required move having a smaller clip within another clip. And Brad showed me how to do this.
I'd say I learned the most just from the iPad. I only use simple things like I said earlier, like Splice, but considering I couldn't even edit before, after sort of teaching myself and asking Brad and that, I think that I learned the most from this.